Good afternoon. May I have your attention, please?
Yeah.
We are going to start the post-lunch session, and I know it is quite challenging because after this excellent lunch, you have to no coffee yet.
That's
So the presenter and the panelists needs to be just on top to keep you awake. So the session is on. Are South Asian countries ready to meet the targets of SDGs by 2030? As you can only understand that SDGs are very, very important. So here I'm really glad to have Dr. Abdullah Shibli to chair the session, and then I myself will make the trigger presentation. We have panelist Ms. Maria Qureshi. Can you please come to dais, and also Mr. Dr. Abu Eusuf, please, if you can. And we were expecting Mr. Fazle Rabbani. He's until now he's missing. So we are looking for him. So if he comes, definitely we'll be really glad to see him at that time. So over to you, Dr.
Hello, can you hear me?
Not on microphone though.
The microphone is working?
Your voice is powerful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Selim, for many different reasons. For organizing this wonderful group here, bringing us together. And the morning sessions were wonderful. So, as they say, the morning shows the day. Thanks to you, all of you, for coming here for this first afternoon session. As Selim said, the title of the session is, Are South Asian countries ready to meet the targets of Sustainable Development Goals by 2030? So the title itself is loaded. Are they ready for achieving the goals of sustainable development by 2030? 13 years. For me, who's a Bangladeshi by birth, but I live here and I watch God. So much has to be done in the next 13 years. Is it doable? And please, believe me, it's not a loaded question. That is, the answer is no. It's not. As Selim and others will corroborate, that Bangladesh has made tremendous progress. So has India. Pakistan is coming along, and so is Sri Lanka. And in South Asian countries, if you consider SAARC, there are other countries too. So please do forgive me if, because I'm a Bangladeshi, I focus on Bangladesh. It's a big neighbor in India. And Pakistan, because we were part of Pakistan before, but we're not forgetting Sri Lanka, we're not forgetting Nepal, we're not forgetting, Bhutan is in, right? Maldives. So why did I put up that slide? What had that got to do with it? The reason is, how many of you know that Sustainable Development Goals has 17 goals and 141 targets? Am I right?
169.
169 targets. How many of you know? Please, be honest. See, only the panelists and a couple of these big guys. And you are a big guy from Nepal. So, the biggest challenge for all these countries is not that we stand in front of this podium in New York, or I have some very good friends who are ambassadors, they stand in front of UN headquarters in Europe and say, we will achieve from India, from Pakistan. It's not enough. Look at those 17. I'm an economist, and I say, God, no poverty. I write a lot. I critique the Bangladesh government, and they say, are you really going to be able to achieve no poverty unless you move the bar, right? Same with the others. And notice that growth is number 8. So that is the first thing you notice if you are not very familiar with this. I looked at one statistical compendium that was prepared by the government of Bangladesh. This thick. I have a slide, and it shows how tricky it is to measure, to track, and to prioritize. Do you all agree? 17, 169, and then I think 241 metrics. So the question itself that the organizers of SANEM and this conference posed is very, very, very meaningful. Are we ready? Now I'll show you the next slide, and I just pick 3. SANEM has kindly sent me a publication where one of our missing, or one of our presenters, Dr. Khandekar, had identified the problems of financing. Right? Selim, if I haven't got it wrong?
No.
The big challenges, because the government takes a big role, and there's some questions about whether the private sector is ready. And in India, it is in a way, but there are big challenges. So financing, monitoring, prioritization, those are all issues. The priority is important because what if we fall back in number 15, but doing well in number 17? Then do we get bonus? Or do we scale back on one? So those are challenges, and we need your help. I'm so glad that you're here, and you're going to be embarked on a career, whether in the private sector of the USA, in your own countries, and you can advise us. You can tell, because we have no communication with the Indian government, otherwise we offered our services to India, but we did to Bangladesh. The Bangladesh SDG coordinator, Mr. Azad, he was here, and I said, we want to provide you with some assistance so that you can track it. I don't know how many of your students are statistics, but with big data and statistical measures and software, it can be done. But there must be a willingness on the part of the government to say, hey, we're going to do it. And B, that the people must buy into it. People of the country. So one of the biggest challenges, do people believe this? As Ajit mentioned, the masses must believe in something. So the last one that I'm going to show is the slide. Something like this, a matrix. I'm sure I was looking for something like this for all countries, that they need to start with these items and say, okay, what are the different goals, targets, and how are you going to measure them? I know I've taken more than my allocated 5 minutes. So, to make up for that, I will give my next keynote presenter, Selim, only 20 minutes. After that, the panelists will have, instead of 30 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, and I would like to open it up to discussion. And that's one of the things I promised the organizers, that I will not cut back on the 30-minute that for open discussion. You will have your 30 minutes. So have your questions ready, and I now invite Professor Selim Raihan, my ex-colleague from University of Dhaka, the Executive Director of SANEM, which as you know is a South Asian
Network on Economic
modeling, and one of the key organizers of this session, of this conference, forum, whatever you call it. Again, please give him a big hand.
So I look at the watch, I have got 20 minutes, but I will try to finish it before that. So thank you for this introduction. Right. I was thinking when I was listening to Dr. Shibli's opening remarks, probably he has actually given the answer to the question. So, but what we really need to discuss on now. So let me then, actually what I thought that, I would talk about SDGs as a kind of paradigm shift, and then understanding SDGs in the context of South Asia, current status of South Asian countries, and then of course, putting the question whether our South Asian countries ready for attaining SDGs by 2030, challenges and concluding remarks. I'll be very brief here, but we all know that actually SDGs, there is a kind of paradigm shift compared to MDGs. So where MDGs the focus of MDGs and SDGs are very, very different. Where SDGs is focused on economic, social, and environmental. So these are the kind of, these are the 7 goals. And then, what we thought that actually understanding SDGs in the context of South Asia, I know this is a bit of debatable, but which SDGs we put at the center? So SDG 7, which talks about energy, access to electricity, and energy, and so it's very much emphasis on energy and electricity. SDG 8, which talks about growth, economic growth, and then decent job. And SDG 9, it talks about industrialization. So these 3, I thought, are actually the heart of the understanding SDGs in the context of South Asia, but it may be different for other regions in other part of the world. So, but there are, though I have just put other SDGs as a kind of circle in the circle, but there are many interlinks among them. So, for example, attaining poverty or attaining hunger, attaining zero poverty or zero hunger under goal 1 and goal 2, you need economic growth. So we thought that actually if we put SDGs 7, 8, 9 at the center, then it will be easier for us to understand the linkages between SDGs in the context of South Asia. But now, when I have put this SDGs 7, 8, and 9 at the center, can we look at what is happening actually at this center with respect to these 3 SDGs? So SDG 8, which talks about growth. So the pattern of growth in South Asian countries, here I have put 5 South Asian countries, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. The data from 1980 to 2015. And if you look at there are kind of marked differences actually in terms of growth experience among these 5 countries. Probably one interesting observation here is that Bangladesh and India, they are actually growing. Of course, also Sri Lanka, but at a lesser pace. But Nepal is stagnant, and Pakistan is a kind of declining trend compared to if we take this whole time period. Another observation is that probably in terms of volatility around the trend, Bangladesh has the least volatility in growth compared to other countries. So this is kind of whether this growth rate or the growth, is it enough to generate the kind of, or elevate, in terms of the dynamics, to generate kind of dynamics needed for elevating poverty, hunger, and other SDGs. Now SDG 9, which talks about the infrastructure, industrialization. If we look at the kind of gap in infrastructure in South Asia, so this is actually taken from very latest SCAP study, UN SCAP study, which they published last month. I was actually associated with this publication. So here we constructed an infrastructure index for Asia Pacific countries. So you can see that the developing Asia Pacific countries have an average of 0.45, whereas you can see the status of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and India, even India, they are much lower than the developing average of the developing Asia Pacific countries. Only Maldives, it appears much higher.
but Maldives is a special case. It is very difficult to compare Maldives with other countries. But when it comes to developed Asia Pacific, you can see the gap is huge. So even we try to understand if this South Asian country, these countries or Asia Pacific countries, they want to achieve the kind of, what is the status, this is the status for in 2015. So they want to achieve by 2030, the average of the developing Asia Pacific countries, it requires a lot of investment in infrastructure, as you can understand from the gap. Also in SDG 9, on the industrialization, that's one of the fundamental targets under SDG 9 is that the LDCs and developing countries, especially the focus on LDCs, to double its share of manufacturing in GDP by 2030. But it's taken from one of my recent work that our South Asian countries experiencing premature deindustrialization. So you see that I've compared Bangladesh, India with Malaysia. And Malaysia, actually, it's against the log of per capita GDPs. As the economy progressed, the country per capita income rose. So Malaysia, you can see very nice kind of pattern of deindustrialization, which actually is consistent with, or is a kind of much like with what happened in European countries or not developed countries. But look at India. India is actually declining. So it's a kind of premature, even before reaching the kind of higher level of income, India's manufacturing share in GDP is declining. But Bangladesh's case still is a bit of exception in South Asia, that Bangladesh is increasing. And the table shows that actually among these 5 South Asian countries, only Bangladesh has, compared to 1990, is consistently has been able to increase the manufacturing share in GDP. But there are, of course, questions that, whether that manufacturing is highly concentrated. We heard about the last session that is highly concentrated around ready-made garments. Now SDG 7. So since I have talked about SDG 7, 8, and 9, I just wanted to give a bit of flavor at the beginning on what is the status. So access to electricity. Okay, that if you look at even World Bank's data, fantastic. Some of the countries are achieving more than 80% or 90%. But does it make any sense? Because in Bangladesh, if you see that the Bangladesh's figure is, okay, it's around 60% above, but Nepal, surprisingly, Nepal's data shows higher access to electricity in Bangladesh. But Nepal experiences more than 15 hours or 16 hours of load shedding. So what does it make sense? How do you really understand this data? Or to put this data into the context whether this indicator can actually take us to understand SDGs properly. So with this, I thought of taking you to just the kind of progress or the status of South Asian countries with respect to other SDGs. Look at the poverty rate at US dollar 1.9. So this is something bit of encouraging in that some of the South Asian countries are actually having much lower poverty rate. For example, Maldives, Pakistan, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka is the latest data. Whereas India has the highest figure in South Asia. But that makes sense because that's a big concern because 75% of the population of South Asia is Indian. So if you have a more than 20% population is actually poor, that means it's a huge number. But this $1.9 a day may not be that frustrating. But if we put $3.1 a day figure, it's really, really alarming. That if you just move the poverty income, you make some adjustment, that poverty figures are huge for many of the South Asian countries. Hunger index is SDG 2, actually it was very high hunger index. Now look at the public expenditure on health, which is under SDG 3. If you compare Malaysia, China, Thailand with these other South Asian countries, 3 leading South Asian countries, Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, you can see the difference, huge difference. Even in terms of public expenditure on education, SDG 4, you can even see the huge difference with the East and Southeast Asian countries and the South Asian countries. Whether just increasing their spending is enough, that's a big question, of course, but that could be a kind of necessary condition that you really need resources at the beginning to begin with. But then how do you spend those resources? What is the quality of spending? That's another big question. So SDG 5 and SDG 8, if we link SDG 5 is the inequality of gender equality, and SDG 8 again decent job. You can see the female labor participation rate is very low. Nepal is a kind of very exception, but if you Nepal, Bhutan, and Maldives, they are kind of exception. But if you take the major big economies in South Asia, very, very low female labor force participation. And India is one of the lowest in South Asia. Of course, Pakistan, and they are facing a lot of challenges in increasing the female labor force participation.
and Bangladesh too. So recent World Bank study actually came up with a very interesting finding that even if you don't really make much effort in increasing investment, but if you actually could make female to work more, then you could actually increase the growth rate by 1 percentage point quite easily. So these are the things which we really need to understand when we talk about SDGs. I'll not really go through much details about this, but it's the exercise, the study which I did, it shows that economic growth doesn't ensure youth employment. So there are issues that your youth unemployment can go hand in hand with economic growth. This came up very nicely in the first session that informality, unorganized sector. These red bars actually the South Asian countries with a very high rate of informal employment in total employment. And you can see that out of the top 5, actually 4 among these 77 or 80 countries, actually 4 countries are from South Asia with a very high rate of informal employment. Foreign direct investment, it talks about an SDG 9, very low, one of the very lowest FDI. We already talked about that in this region. Now, this is something very also interesting, like that when in SDG 10, which talks about inequality. So why do South Asian countries stand in terms of inequality? So what I did actually is actually taken from one of my study last year, that I just compared Gini index in 1980 and Gini index in 2015, and whether if you are in 1980, if you are actually on the below or over 45 degree, on the 45 degree, that means no change. If you are above, that means your inequality is increased compared to 1980. And if you're below, that means your inequality decreased. And it shows that you can see Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, they're all above 45 degree line. Which is these inequality index data is taken from the World Inequality Database, which is a kind of modified inequality index, Gini index. And this is something which suggests that compared to 1980, inequality in South Asia increased for these major economies. But I think the first question, which was actually the chair, he also raised that, and also the theme of this session, that are South Asian countries ready to, achieve the targets? But then look at the performance of South Asian countries during the MDG period. So this is the data taken from the MDG track, and they actually try to see what was the progress of the countries in terms of achieving MDGs. And if you can see, the only South Asian countries which were having a kind of 70%, which is Maldives. But if you compare, India is on the 43, Afghanistan, Pakistan 34, 26, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka 53% of the targets of MDGs. So which suggests that during the MDG period, despite the fact that probably we can, there are some indicators based on that you can show that Bangladesh did well, but in terms when you compare a kind of longer time horizon, there are still a long way to go in terms of achieving this. So what are the challenges? So I could see there are 3 major challenges. In addition to all other issues in South Asia, I think we talked about growth issues this morning. We talked about the regional integration. We are not being able to use regional integration properly. We are not able to, even in the first session, talking about stimulate the required level of growth. There are so many issues in the infrastructure level. But if we focus on the SDGs, then we can see that among the proposed indicators related to the targets, many of them are non-quantifiable. So this is a kind of, it becomes a kind of non-starter. So this will be problematic while monitoring the progress in achieving SDGs. So the countries will be in a kind of mess, what I can really foresee that when they really want to measure the progress in SDGs. During the MDG, it was really easier because targets or goals were smaller and the number of targets and indicators are smaller, but now in SDGs is a big challenge. And the critical issue is the implementation of the SDGs, the resources, financing, and the changing global scenario is a major challenge. Whether during the MDG period, the kind of global consensus, the way it was, and which is very much favorable, are we living in the same world now? Do we have a consensus at the global level in terms of achieving SDGs, in terms of cooperation among different countries? I talked about the resources. I just want to highlight, this is the very latest work we have done for the Planning Commission in Bangladesh. We tried to estimate the resources required for implementing SDGs in Bangladesh by until 2030. So by year, from 2017 until 2030, and then the resources actually we estimated by goal, and the resource you can see the red line, it shows if the business as usual growth happens, which is around 6.5 to 7%, and then if the projected growth, which is a kind of
under the next 5-year plan, or by 2030 the government wants to have a high growth path. Even then, you can see if you look by 2030, it will range between 24% to 28% of GDP, the resources which will be required to implement SDGs. Huge resources, huge amount of resources. And how do you really finance them? So we propose for 5 financing options. Private sector financing. Actually, that will take a larger part, because very few people, they really understand that actually it will be the private sector who will have the major responsibility in implementing SDGs. And whether the government or the private sector are in position, or the private sector, they are aware of it, whether they have to do, because in terms of decent job, in terms of many other indicators, but whether the public sector or the government is providing the kind of guiding philosophy to the private sector in performing the job. Public-private partnership, I'll finish in a minute. External financing, especially foreign direct investment, I think very less explored, and we know that it's very less amount of FDI it comes, and not much in the manufacturing sector. Foreign aid grants and non-developed government organizations. So concluding, South Asian countries are not ready yet to meet the targets of SDGs by 2030. The national efforts in South Asian countries are not very encouraging to achieve the SDGs. So when I look at the kind of development plans or development programs in the leading South Asian countries, and the kind of progress they have made over the last decade in terms of different indicators of SDGs, you have to do a kind of, I think the effort needs to be something extraordinary to achieve the SDGs by 2030. There is something which are not really discussed about the political economy of SDGs. You say, there is a need for a strong political commitment for negotiating with the challenges in implementing of the SDGs and generating political capital for SDGs both at the country and global levels. This will remain the most critical task for the next 1.5 years. Thank you for the very kind attention.
Thank you, Professor Raihan, for your wonderful presentation. I will not take any more time to summarize his main arguments. Maybe at the end, if we have time, I will raise a few questions. What I would like to do is now invite the panelists to join us here. And the panelists, as Selim had mentioned, are we have Maria Qureshi, she's a consultant of the World Bank. Professor Eusuf, he is a professor of development studies at Dhaka University. And Maria will open up the phase of comments on Selim's presentation.
Yes, I know. So, hi, this is Maria. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this is Maria, and most of my work has been in education in Pakistan. While I think Selim pointed out that the most important SDGs would be SDG 7, 8, and 9, the bulk of my presentation is going to be about SDG 4, because I think that needs to be the stepping stone for achievement of many of these other SDGs that we are talking about. When Selim asked me to present, I was tempted to present on SDG 4 since I have mostly worked on that. But then, as a South Asian, I was also tempted to, just talk about a very bleak picture, how we are lagging behind on most of, the indicators, and how it's really difficult for us to make any considerable progress by 2030. But then I took a step back, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to share a success story from Pakistan, and to share a counter narrative which can be a stepping stone for us. And I think small incremental interventions like this one can be, maybe the way forward for us to achieve or get close to achieving SDGs by 2030. So this is an in-service teacher training program, a case study from Pakistan. But before that, I'll just recap 4C, which is what I mostly talk about, which is that by 2030, we need to increase the supply of trained and qualified teachers in the system. That means we need to increase we need to have about 26 million qualified trained teachers by 2030. Now let's look at Punjab's case and where we stand. So I know I promised I'll not just share a bleak picture, but that's like only the couple of slides that I have, which are a little sad. Every year, about 39% of students just drop out from kindergarten to grade 1 in Pakistan, and we can see that most of the reasons are related to poor teaching quality. So what we need to do is to invest in our teachers if we want to improve the state of affairs. That means having good infrastructure, supportive families, good governments, and students who are going to schools, but then it most importantly means that we need a teacher who is qualified, motivated, and has, is prepared to take a lead. So the main challenges, if you look at Punjab, are that teaching is not the most financially lucrative profession. Teachers get insufficient induction training as well as in-service professional development training, which is not even great quality. And as a result, we can see that they lag behind on content and pedagogical knowledge, which leads to poor self-esteem and just promoting rote learning. Another thing that Punjab lags behind on is that they're not even putting in enough time for professional development. If you look at all the countries that are doing well on your PISA and all the other important benchmarks in terms of student learning, we can see that Pakistan is way behind. So how can we solve this crisis? And I'll just move forward with, I'll take a jump into the case study. But then before that, we basically need to focus on moving as many of our teachers as is possible from weak teachers. We need to empower them so they can move from being weak teachers to excellent teachers. And how do we do that? So I'll just discuss this intervention. This was the work which was done in collaboration with the DFID and McKinsey and Company. I was a part of this project, and then I'll just briefly explain how this ended up affecting about 185,000 teachers in the system, and these were all public school primary teachers. So what we had in Punjab was that the training material, we had training material for in-service professional development, but this was very low quality, handwritten, sometimes just material from Wikipedia, lack of structure, just very ad hoc, different districts teaching different things, not looking at what the needs of these teachers are, and there wasn't any specific agenda. And what we ended up doing was that we ended up investing in these standardized, structured, user-friendly teacher training modules that have a specific agenda, pre-test and post-test for teachers to figure out where they stand before and after the training. Lots of examples from teacher guides and textbooks to build linkages between what they are teaching and what they're supposed to know, and a lot of practice questions. So it was very interactive and very hands-on. And it looked like this. So it was a library of 76 standardized modules which covered aspects of content knowledge as well as pedagogical knowledge. So these are some of the topics that you can look at. Now these modules were deployed based on the feedback collected and the need assessment which was done in the field. So we looked at 2 data points. We looked at student results for different subjects, which gave us information about how competent the teachers are in terms of the content that they are teaching. But then we also look at classroom observation results that we got from the tool that we use in Punjab. And those 2 data points were used to say that these are the problem areas for different districts. So these are the from the library of modules that we have, these are the modules that we need for district A, but then these are the modules that we need for district B. In Punjab, I think this was the main innovation because Punjab is the biggest province in Pakistan in terms of its population. And there are 36 districts. The northern part of the province is very different from the southern part. So, there's a lot of challenges when we talk about, having a standardized approach. But then this was, I think, what this intervention was able to target, that it was standardized yet flexible because it was looking at individual district level needs. We weren't able to break it down to school level that would have been really sophisticated and maybe the step in the right direction, but I think we might be getting there in the future. Another thing was that there was a continuous feedback mechanism which was incorporated, so we were able to iterate and learn from the field. So we had pre-test, post-test, a lot of data collection, and we would know that this is what is working, but this is what is not working. So we were able to iterate and tweak and make changes on the spot. But then I think everyone might be wondering that did this actually work, and how do we know if it did? So yes, improvements were seen across key elements of teaching. So in terms of pedagogy, we could see that classroom discussions, group discussions, simulations and demonstrations, use of visual aids, activity-based teaching. We could see an increase in almost a lot of these classrooms. Then 35% of the teachers showed improvement. When we looked at the pre-test and the post-test, we could see that 35% of the teachers showed an increase in knowledge due to this training. In addition to this, the module had several other improvements. So there was a post and pre-test which allowed teachers to know where they stood before and after the training. There was a standardized content which was taught across district in terms of the quality of the content. So everyone was getting a minimum level of quality in terms of teacher training. Data collection and tracking across time was made possible. So we could see across time and across teachers what are the improvements and what are still the maybe the gaps in policy. And lastly, the development needs were preemptively addressed. So if the teacher had to teach algebra the next month and they did not have enough content knowledge, the analysis allowed that we could just give them the training before they would actually deliver that lesson. So their needs were preemptively and they were addressed in real time, basically. However, there's still a long way to go. So there were quite a few challenges that we faced when we were implementing this this intervention. And then I'll just talk a little bit about them. So coordination and oversight. So firstly, yes, it's important to have good teacher training in place, but then there's as much as you can do with when you don't have the best people in the system as teachers. So you need the most competent people in the system as teachers, and then you can build upon that existing knowledge with focused and targeted training. So this was something which was lacking. Also, there isn't really a proper accountability or performance management mechanism in place in Punjab, unfortunately. So yes, we can say that the teachers ended up performing, like similarly in their post-test and pre-test, and there wasn't any difference for them. But there isn't much you can do, and you can't really have the teachers, like you can't really say that okay, you are like you need to go for some more rigorous training, or you need to be like out of the system for a while. In order for you to maybe work on this even more. So there isn't much we can do about that, and our hands are tied when it comes to bureaucratic decisions like these. Secondly, there still isn't any incentive structure in place. We don't have any certification for teachers at all. We don't have any career progression for them. So there is no incentive for them to attend these training. It's mostly like a punishment for them to go for training. It's not something they consider professional development. Lastly, use of technology was another thing where we could have, I think, maybe worked more, and we tried a little bit by complementing our modules with some videos for best practices for teachers, but then I think there's a long way we could go to make it more interactive and more hands-on, because it can be really boring when you're going through, even if it's an interactive module, there's as much as you can do. Lastly, I'll just say a few things about the way forward, what it means for Pakistan, but then what it also means for overall improvement for the region on SDG 4, which I think is really, really important. One would be systems approach. That's something the bank is also working on. It's called systems approach for better educational results. I'm a part of the SABER team, and we just piloted some of these tools in Punjab, Pakistan. What this talks about mostly is that we cannot solve a problem in isolation. So we need to look at infrastructure, we need to look at parent motivation, we need to look at what the students know, we need to look at principals' leadership, and all these would come together and then affect teaching quality and teacher training. So we need to have all these factors in place, other than just focusing on one element of the policy agenda. Secondly, political will, I already talked about. There is a lot of need to take some tough decisions, like having certification in place, having more performance more robust performance management mechanisms in place and to take actions accordingly. Thirdly, increased cooperation. So I'm talking about international cooperation because I think SDG 4C talks a lot about that. So we need to learn a lot from the international best practices. So we need to maybe reach out to Gyanshala in India, maybe BRAC in Bangladesh, and we have already done that on the curriculum front. We have reached out to Bangladesh to BRAC, and they helped us quite a bit on developing better textbooks. But then this is another area where we need to reach out to our neighbors. But then also, I'm also talking about local partnerships here and public-private partnerships here because the private sector is doing much better when it comes to teacher training in Pakistan. So maybe there is room for us to join hands with them. Fourth, I would talk about better teaching materials. So yes, teacher training is important, but then teachers need to have better textbooks, better teacher guides, and other materials in order for them to be more productive and more, I think, responsive to the training that they are receiving. And lastly, I think what Selim also mentioned, better tracking. So yes, currently the United Nations Institute for Statistics, they talk about it, and they also talk about this in the GEM report that we don't really have a proper comparable metric that we can, just collect data on, especially on SDG 4 and compare different regions on their performance. So that's something we really need to look at. So yes, there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to are we getting there, are we really there? But I just believe that small interventions like these ones can be made more sophisticated, and we can join hands and at least move in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for your wonderful presentation. It is an important topic. Education is very closely related to sustainable development, and I'm so glad that she mentioned the lessons that we can learn from India, from Bangladesh, and other countries. And I will hear, I'm an economist, but I'm also a marketer. I'm very closely associated with MIT's Poverty Action Lab. And one of the things they do is they take different measures, different policy interventions, and actually test it in a controlled environment. So what do you do with teachers who don't perform? Do you sack them? Or do you provide them with monetary incentives? And one of the things Maria, I hope, will look at is, of the 6 things you mentioned, salary. Teachers are better teachers when they are well paid, well fed, and well taken care of. Right? Thank you. So I will now pass on the baton to Professor Eusuf. He's a professor of in the Department of Development Studies at the great University of Dhaka.
Thank you very much for giving me opportunity. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to share our experience, and thank you, Selim and World Bank, for making this opportunity. So Selim already mentioned that is how we are ready to meet the targets of SDGs by 2030. But I will focus more on Bangladesh context, that how Bangladesh is ready for implementation of SDGs. So focusing on South Asia, just a quick look at the South Asia that is the hub of 40% of the world poor, but we have some challenges, though we know it's very important proper implementation of SDGs to overcome some of the challenges. And one of the most common factor is that though we, as mentioned in the morning, that South Asia has experienced in attaining growth. Particularly if you look at the Bangladesh and Indian case, that for particularly Bangladesh, over the last 1 decade, Bangladesh experienced that is working on the path of on average 6.5% growth, and last year we crossed 7% growth based on Bangladesh government statistics, and also this year there is a positive trend. But growth is not enough. We need to combine it with the growth, development development and different type of development, social, economic, environment development, then to get the fruitful outcome. So despite attaining some growth, but we have some challenges in the South Asia, particularly there is one common factor is the inequalities among the countries in South Asia. And also, if you look at the micro statistics, there is a macro success and micro failure. In the macro level, if you will find that there is a good success, good indicator, but micro level, there is a huge disparity across the states, even in India. Even there are some regional disparity in the context of Bangladesh also. And also integration of the SDGs with national planning process. This is very important, and this is one of the lessons that in achieving the MDGs in the South Asia context, that it was not basically the compatible or combining with the planning process. So this is one of the lessons this year. This time, the South Asian countries, they are having opportunity to implement SDGs. And also, it's very important unavailability of data for monitoring. We need to engage stakeholders' participation for implementation of SDG. Particularly, that Selim mentioned that private sector participation, so and civil society participation also important. And this is very important that if we want to achieve the fruitful outcome of development or growth, we need to combine with the institutions. So it's very, very important for looking at the institutions, and also, of course, it's resources necessary for SDG implementation. If we look at the Bangladesh case, that Bangladesh, if we look at the Bangladesh macro picture, we see that there is a growth trend, there is a positive trend of in the context of Bangladesh. Our per capita income also increasing for as the government statistics, it's the 1,602 US dollar, just based on this year budget is fixed. But if you look at the World Bank classification, also Bangladesh is in the lower income medium category countries. In terms of human development index, Bangladesh is also lower medium human development category country, and also Bangladesh government is working, that is to see Bangladesh as a middle income country by 2021. And also, with Bangladesh is attaining GDP growth rate, but with sluggish investment. Though government has taken some initiative to attract the foreign investment, government already declared to set up 100 special economic zone in the coming years. So there is some initiative taken to attract, that is investment as well. But at this moment, it's still with sluggish investment. Now, Bangladesh in the context of SDG, that is, if we look at the experience of MDG attainment, though most of the indicators Bangladesh progress is well in attaining MDG, but still MDG 1, MDG 5, MDG 7, that is eradicating extreme poverty and hunger. Though Bangladesh has been successful in it, that is reducing poverty at a significant level, but there are some, still we have challenges with facing the extreme poverty, and also there are some challenges with the tomorrow's poor. Bangladesh is a disaster-prone country, but there are some, they are transient poor. So maybe they are not poor at this moment, but tomorrow, due to natural shock and due to other shocks, they will be tomorrow's poor. So these sort of challenges we are facing. And one common issue that also persists in South Asia, that inequality among the regions or in the country, that is over the years, inequality increased. Though we have growth, but inequality increased. If you see the Gini coefficient increased from 0.39 in 1990 to 0.45 in 2000, and further increased to 0.47 in 2010, based on our household income and expenditure survey data. And also, there is a rapid rural-urban migration has been taken place in Bangladesh. It's almost 30% people there staying in the in the urban area, 30% people. So, talking with the Martin Rebellion, there is on the urbanization of poverty. There are a group of people, they migrated to the rural to the urban area. So we are facing a lot of challenges addressing the urban poor. This is also one of the issues. Though if you look at the poverty data, we have significant performance. If you
look at the data, that is still rural poverty. But we, in the macro level, as I mentioned, that there is a macro success but micro failure. There are some pockets there still poverty is still high. And if you look at the multidimensional poverty index, still 50% of our poor people, they are lying below poverty line, though the national poverty statistics something like 23%. So this is also important, and also vulnerability issues. Almost 60% people are vulnerable in the context of Bangladesh, though in general the poverty has reduced a lot. But what lessons we learned from MDG? That is, at that time, lower alignment with national plan, inadequate data availability, lower engagement of stakeholders, weak monitoring, and also absence of dedicated institutional mechanism for implementation. But at this moment, what are the planning and implementation process? GOP, Bangladesh is one of the countries that have taken it forefront in that is in formulating, in designing the SDGs. That is preparation that government has an integrated SDGs with 7 5-year plan. So Bangladesh runs under 7 5-year plan, and Bangladesh SDGs and 7 5-year plan. So it's go hand in hand, and also 7 5-year plan has been designed in keeping in mind the SDGs. And government developed a mapping document including all ministries for fast-track implementation. And also, if we look at the budgetary structure, also it's a proper reflection of. And he mentioned about Mr. Abul Kalam Azad, who is the Principal Secretary of Prime Minister. So he is coordinating basically SDG coordinator and coordinating with all the ministries, particularly 11 ministries work together. So already started working on priority setting and contextualizing global goals with the national settings. And also a national plan of action is being prepared, and Selim mentioned that already GD has already estimated the cost needed to implement SDG with the help of organizations like SANEM. So if we look at the goals that are better integrated, still no goal 1, that is the target is no poverty, but remain challenges with regional poverty, urban poverty, and number 2, zero hunger. But if Bangladesh has been successful moving out of this sort of hunger, but still we have been facing the challenges of nutrition. So if you look at the indicators of nutrition, underweight or stunting, wasting, still we are facing the challenges with there is some food availability, but quality of food is really important. And also gender equality, we have been successful and focusing on almost 4% of our GDP is being spent on addressing gender issues, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, and climate action. But we have also less integrated so far good health and well-being. As Selim mentioned, that Bangladesh health expenditure is less than 1% of GDP, 0.9%. It's one of the lowest in South Asia. So we need, though, as per WHO stipulates that it should be 5% of GDP. Per capita health expenditure is one of the lowest in South Asia. In terms of, it's good to see that we are addressing education, but quality of education. Not only we are comfortable with the quantity, but this time SDG focus on quality of education. But Bangladesh is going good with the quantity, but we still having challenges with the quality of education. And then already Selim mentioned decent work, economic growth, industry, and these are the issues, and Bangladesh is focusing on, but we need to go far away on this. And we need to focus on reduced inequalities, and also it's a really important to look at the sustainable cities and communities. And also we are facing challenges with the peace, justice, and strong institutions. So these are the issues. As basically education, 2.9% of our GDP is being spent on education, but based on the UNESCO as a signatory of Bangladesh, we need to spend on 6% of our GDP, 20% of our budget, but still we need to go ahead. And also, yes, last 1 minute, and if we look at the neighboring countries, already Selim mentioned that, but one of the lowest we are spending on education sector. Also, we are spending on lowest on health expenditure, it's less than 1%. And social security is issues. If we want to reduce inequality, so Bangladesh already developed national social security strategy in 2015, and there are some policies also we developed, like national industrial policy 2015. But in terms of social security, we are spending around 2% of our GDP, but we need to spend on 4 to 5% of our GDP to reduce these inequality issues. And already I have spoken about investment issues. But one of the issues that our foreign exchange, foreign export earnings is basically come from apparel sector. 82% of our foreign export earnings came from apparel sector. But around 4,000 factory, they are focusing on this. But now the factory owners they themselves, and also government is focusing on environment friendly industries, greening ready-made garments industries, greening apparel industries. And there are some 6 industry, they have already received platinum LEED certification, leadership in energy and environmental design. It's a US based, they make rating, and Bangladesh is the home of #1 textile industry in the world. Is the home of #1 denim industry in the world. Bangladesh is one of #1 environment friendly industry in the world. But these numbers are very few, number 28 out of 4,000 apparel factories. So what are the challenges? But we need to mobilize resources. We need to ensure political stability. This is very important political commitment and consistency of the government. And we need to address the environmental shocks. And clearly, we need to engage the private sector in attaining SDGs in association with NGO, CSO, and think tanks. We need to advantage the demographic dividend, 15 plus population, and we need to focus on the skill development for this increased health expenditure, quality of education, and addressing inequality. And obviously, we need to focus on institutional mechanism for implementing SDGs. So if we can combine growth, development, and institutions, I think we'll be able to implement SDGs in an effective manner in the context of Bangladesh. Thank you very much for your patience here.
Thank you so much, Professor Eusuf. As I can tell from your presentation and your passions, you are very committed to sustainable growth in Bangladesh. And I hope that we have clones of Professor Eusuf in other countries who are as passionate about sustainable growth. Or you can teach them how you need to keep track of all the 17 and then not get lost. As you know, my favorite writer, Patrick Modiano of France, he said, so that you don't get lost in the neighborhood. So I will now, again, hope that you have questions for our distinguished panelists. Selim gave us a wonderful kickoff, and then Maria and Eusuf, they reinforced what Selim said, basically adding, complementing what Selim left out, which I think Selim will not mind my saying. So the open discussion is now yours.
Just tell us who you are, and if you are addressing a question to a particular panelist or to all, or I might end up answering that which you don't want.
Thank you very much. Let me congratulate all the keynote presenters and panelists. Oh, by the way, this is Qazi Maruful Islam. I am a faculty with the Department of Development Studies, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. So, well, I mean, from the presentations, including the keynote presentation, you see we have different views on which one is the most important goals. And in fact, we can spend months after, on debating over that which one is the most important goals. But if we look at your concluding slides, all the three presenters, like including the keynote presenters, if we look at your way forward or the concluding observations, what we actually end up with referring to one single goal, which is SDG 16. When you talk about like quality of spending, female labor participation, inequality, youth unemployment, or the quality of teachers, or the implementation, integration of SDGs into national planning issues, all these issues are addressed by SDG 16, which is called like the goal of the goals, which includes institution and governance, peace and justice. If you look at the South Asian scenario, then you have to put adequate emphasis on this particular goal, like which SDG 16, because it talks about democracy, it talks about accountability, transparency, and also it also talks about like the volatile political situation which is challenged through the rise of extremism, like which comes under the peace issue, and also the weak justice system. So if having said that, my question to the like all of the panelists, how to address this particular goal, like SDG 16. How you can really achieve other goals excluding this SDG 16. Thank you very much.
I would like to first request Professor Selim Raihan to give us his thoughts on this question.
Well, thank you. I think you raised a very important point. Actually, we're not excluding, I think, none of us, that SDG itself, something like that, the 70 can't exclude anything. So everything is there. But probably in terms of, I would say when I mentioned that 7, 8, 9 is at the center, I did not say that these are the priority or these are the only SDGs. So what I thought that in the South Asian context, you have a lot of issues to deal with, the growth, infrastructure, and industrialization. But then you're very much right that SDG 16 is a kind of maybe prerequisite to achieve those. So they are interlinked, very much interlinked. So it's not, there is no kind of straightforward answer to your question. But probably we are dealing with something which is so enormous, the SDGs, these goals and targets. But we need to find out ways how we can manage these enormous tasks. So I found that when I was talking to the policymakers in Bangladesh, they are really struggling at this moment. At the Planning Commission and the Minister of Finance, why to emphasize on? Because you are very much right. If you don't really have the kind of institutions in place or the kind of political commitment, then is it possible to increase simply the budgetary allocation, the spending on health and education? And you have seen that the very recent budget in Bangladesh, actually, it was very much marginally it was improved, but so the very low, from the very low figures, that doesn't really make much sense because you are not on the track to achieve SDGs by 2030. So how to mobilize those political will, how to mobilize those institutions? Again, so the issue is which one will make exonas and which one will make enrichers. I think these are all interlinked, and we are dealing with a very complex kind of situation. But my take was that probably why not we start that our focus is on, because unless we have growth, unless we have the infrastructure, and unless we have the decent job, this kind of at our focus, then we can't really, and then we can link what kind of human resources we need, what kind of spending on education, on health, or other areas we need to achieve those. So I think, and of course the institutions, right kind of institutions. So I would say that, there is a straightforward answer to your query. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just agree with what Selim just said, because I think this is just SDG 16 is the foundation for us to achieve all other SDGs, because I think I have stressed upon the importance of institutions earlier on in the day as well. And I think unless we have strong institutions in justice and peace, we can't really make progress on any of the crucial SDGs that all of my colleagues have I think stressed upon. So I think to be focusing more on education, I think I just had mentioned that at the end of my presentation as well, that political will is one of the most important things that we need. So yes, I think SDG 16 is crucial to achieve any of the other SDGs.
There was a question here.
Yeah. Can we defer to
Mr. Suman?
No, go ahead. He can go. Please go ahead. I'll
There are
wait
two,
my
Mr.
turn.
Sohan and Ms. Salim. So, Mr. Sohan.
My question to the panel would be clearly the involvement of the private sector, NGOs, CSOs and think tanks is going to be a very, in my view, crucial, if not critical part of this whole process of realizing the 17 SDG goals and objectives. My question to the panel is, do you feel that there is enough traction and importance being given to this critical element? Are the NGOs and think tanks being given the space and the opportunity to partner the government in the realization of the SDGs?
I think Mr. Soman asked a very important question, and we need to maybe take a few minutes to reflect on it, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, and if possible from India, whether the NGOs and the civil society are given the space to build up the momentum, or is it just going to be government which will either run the show or be the horse that pulls the 17 goals, if I'm formulating correctly? So I would ask
Yeah, I think for Pakistan, I think there is definitely enough appetite for the government to reach out to the private sector and NGOs. In the past, with the MDGs being a main focus area for Pakistan, I remember that we had this intervention where we were trying to improve the universal primary enrollment, especially in the rural part of Punjab, which was a challenge for us. And the female enrollment rates were pretty low there. So at that point, we partnered with quite a few non-profits and the CSOs, and it was a really good experience, because I think we made some great progress on that indicator. So we were able to, I think, in a couple of months, we were able to enroll about 6,000 children I think across a couple of districts. So I think there's definitely appetite for that. Even for the for teacher training as well as curriculum, we have been reaching out to private sector organizations. We have like really big, high-end private school chains in Pakistan, and there has been a lot of appetite to reach out to subject specialists and course coordinators from these organizations and learn from what they are doing. So I believe that's true for Pakistan at least.
I think it's a very important question. In Bangladesh, I think the civil society think tanks, they're very proactive. So it's very difficult for government to exclude them. So, and maybe in other South Asian countries too. So the civil society think tanks, they will make themselves relevant to this discussion. But despite that, I want to just give you some numbers, because the very recent work we have done for Planning Commission, we came up with some staggering numbers. Sometimes when we were presenting these numbers, the Planning Commission could not believe these numbers. Like on average, annually, how much would you need to achieve the targets, SDGs, the resources requirement? the numbers was on average for the next 13, 14 years, Bangladesh should need at least $100 billion per year to implement SDGs. So I know these numbers are actually staggering, but actually if you look at these numbers, because when I was talking to the Planning Commission people, they're saying that it can't be, because during the MDG period it was on average $4 to $5 billion. Now how come it's $100 billion now? But actually, as I said, it's a paradigm shift. If you look at the MDGs and the SDGs, if you compare them, if you get into the nitty-gritty of SDGs, actually it's a very, very comprehensive. It doesn't really exclude anything. I was in Bangkok last month. Actually, there was a UNESCO meeting, whereas the UNCTAD people and UNESCO, they're talking about non-tariff issues, and then how non-tariff issues can be, addressing the non-tariff issues can actually help achieving SDGs. So surprisingly, it was found that in SDG actually there is no mentioning about non-tariff issues, no NTB. So actually we were really wondering how come that was missed out. Because if you look at the SDGs, the targets and the indicators, the kind of goals, nothing was missed out. So it is so comprehensive. And then the next staggering number is that if you have $100 billion per year, 45% to 50% actually is the private sector they have to spend. So actually the reason is that these big numbers actually coming from the investment requirement for generate growth. Because if you look at the SDGs, that's why I put this 7, 8, 9 at the heart, the center. Because number 8 SDG, it talks about growth. And then it has a kind of, it says at least 7% per capita income growth of the LDCs until 2030. And the kind of investment requirements to, and if you look at the gap, the countries for those targeted investment requirement, is a huge, huge amount. So but when I talk to the private sectors about, especially the chambers, and probably the think tanks, they're aware, sir, that CPD and other organizations, and we are also doing a lot of work. But the private sector, they're not aware at all, especially the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce or different federations. They even don't know actually what are their kind of responsibility in implementing SDGs. So I think there is a huge gap now, and the governments, they have to play a very strong role, to get the private sector on board and to try to understand, in a much clearer way, what are the responsibilities for different stakeholders.
Thank you, Selim. I think Bangladesh existence of NGOs, CSOs, I think is very strong. But I do agree with Selim that it's the private sector, they're reluctant. But I think we can easily engage them, private sector, in implementing SDGs. India, they recently formulated, I think 2 years back, CSR law. And under that CSR law, they need to spend 2% of their profit, and there is a account set by the government. There is a law. So I think in Bangladesh, the private sector, they are spending some, say for under CSR activities is for charity purpose, philanthropic basis, but not in a systematic manner. So I think South Asian countries, they can come up with this sort of some provision that in the legal system that they need to spend some sort of money against their profit, particularly to implement this SDGs. So I think we can think of it to use this CSR. Other than that, whatever the success we have, it's not only the success of the government. There is a strong role of NGOs in reducing, particularly in reducing poverty in a significant manner in the context of Bangladesh.
I just wanted to introduce a bit of spice now, because I know we were all sleeping. I want to defer to my friend Abu Eusuf, because I thought that will keep us awake. Actually, it's not about the CSR when it comes to private sector's role in SDGs. Because just one example I would like to cite. The ready-made garment sector in Bangladesh is facing probably the hardest challenges in its lifetime, because of all these working condition issues, accord and alliance, the buyers' pressure, factory conditions. You have to improve the factory conditions. So when you link the SDG A, the decent job, from you have to ensure decent job,
And you have to, if you want to improve the factory commission. So I was talking to ready-made garments people, especially the the garments association, that okay, what is the cost requirement to have the upgrade the existing ready-made garments factories to the level which can ensure this job. Actually, the numbers they were saying, probably if they can add up to this $100 billion. So when then I was really feeling so comfortable that this $100 billion, which I said annually Bangladesh should need to implement SDGs, actually they don't really come from the air, because if you really want to ensure this job at the factory level, and you have to ensure other conditions which actually will ensure the different other targets in the SDGs. So it is not really the CSR. Actually, I agree with you. The CSR is of course required, but it's on top of the CSR. It's a kind of regular activities of the private sector, which will be very, very important. Thank you.
Will the chair please permit me a follow-up question?
Let me first count. I'm sorry to do it. How many people who I know the one question she was willing to be kind to me and was waiting to ask a question. Is it how many other people would like to ask a question? If it is very brief, out of I guess my concern that we will not be able to finish. If it's very brief and it's targeted, Mr. Soban can have his.
Yes, it will be very brief. I'd like to ask Selim this question. We are at my institute currently implementing a project where we have created what is called a country support mechanism for the implementation of the project. We have donors, we have NGOs, we have the government, we have all the concerned ministries there. Do we have something like that in position yet in terms of implementing the SDG goals, a country support mechanism with all the stakeholders present? And if not, maybe you can suggest this when you go back. And the postscript to that is, how healthy is the competition between the think tanks and the experts in the domain of implementing the SDGs?
No, I think we have healthy competition. We want, it's not competition but cooperation, definitely. But there is no such mechanism you rightly mentioned. Actually, it's very much absent. It's very much required.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Sarita. I'm from Nepal. I don't have any
Microphone.
I don't have any question. I just want to share some story based on Nepal, how Nepal is implementing Sustainable Development Goal. And I want to address Selim's concern, like why Nepal have more proportion of access to electricity. Maybe that is because of the solar system Nepal is adopting. On the hilly part, most of the people have solar. They use solar as electricity, and even in the city area, on the time of load setting, they use solar power. And the rate of load setting is also decreasing in case of Nepal. And on case of Sustainable Development Goal, all the way following our learning from Millennium Development Goal, Nepal has been trying to localize the Sustainable Development Goal in case of Nepal, based upon Nepal. And the National Planning Commission is conducting different conference awareness program among the different ministries, private sector and government sector to make them aware about the Sustainable Development Goal. At the same time, UNDP and UNFPA, the organization like UNDP and UNFPA are having the national level conference, workshop, teachers training, creating the expert both at the local level and national level. And we even have a sharp youth dialogue on sustainable development goal in Nepal in 2016, where we have young people and ministries from around the South Asia in Nepal. And I think that the follow-up conference has happened in Maldives in 2017. And we are having lots of national conference on sustainable development goal and South Asian level conference on sustainable development goal, Asian level conference on sustainable development goal around the different countries in South Asia and in Nepal as well. And there are lots of workshop and empowering program is happening in Nepal. Government is trying to create its own monitoring indicators to monitor sustainable development goal in Nepal.
Thank you, Sarita, for your wonderful comment and question. There was a question because Selim wanted to jump in. I said, Selim, let's ask the question first, and he will then give his response.
Thank you. Bogdan Constantinescu, Governance, Financial Management. Look, I think if somebody would ask me what is the difference between the MDGs and the SDGs, I think in one word, right? I think MDGs focused on access, and that was not so difficult to be achieved. Going to Maria's example, building schools. Yeah. It's not very easy, I agree, but you know, you do it. Moving on to SDGs, one word, quality comes to mind. So that's the balance that I would have, and I agree it's a quantum leap. It's a complete change and shift in paradigm. And you know, as long as you would have that teacher somewhere in Punjab saying that, you know, I get paid, I go one day to school per week and I still get fully paid. Or like that teacher in Kenya who said, oh, sometimes you get paid even after you die. It means you have a big problem, and it goes down to SDG 16, accountability, institutions, and governance.
Thank you. Maria again has allowed me to go to the next question. She will respond at the end. Next question.
There was,
No, she had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
please. Oh, you had a question, right?
I don't have a
Oh, okay.
Mugdha. Okay, Mugdha, it's your turn.
Sorry, Mugdha, doctoral student, UVA, University of Virginia. My question is a bit methodological and focus is very narrow, what we're talking about, so I don't know, like, it's not that burning question, but I would like to ask Maria. My question is directed to you. So I was just wondering, when you showed your results, like there was some positive gains of the teachers. So I was just wondering the econometric methodology behind it. Was it a like randomized method, the way you have intervened for the teachers? Was there a like proper control group, or it was a like large scale project and you were just estimating the differences of the outcomes? Just to be sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mugdha. And so Marie has a lot to answer for. Any other question before I let the panelists?
Not so much a question.
If she's up, go ahead.
Not so much.
Yes.
Am I loud enough?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically a continuation of the conversation that that took up most of the time afterwards. It's very interesting, and my name is Ipshita. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Columbia, and a lot of my background is in India. I just wanted to share why it's so important, and I think critical, to have the third sector or NGO partnerships in implementing these kind of development goals. So I was working in Keonchhar, Orissa for a little bit, and that's it's a very underdeveloped area. I was actually working with within these tribal villages with no electricity, no roads, nothing. It was a very interesting time of my life, and so there have been some very interesting private-public partnerships for development in those areas. From trying to build schools, some kind of nutrition programs. One of the interesting things there was that because of a malaria-related funding that came from abroad, the government had distributed all these mosquito nets to the villagers. But the villagers were using those mosquito nets for fishing. This is not a made-up story. This happened to me. I saw this, and because I went in with a group of community organizers, they were able to communicate what was going on. So two things were going on over here. A, there was a need for some kind of fishing equipment, which they didn't have. And B, there was absolutely no understanding of the need for mosquito nets to protect themselves and the children from malaria. So, the point being that when decisions take place at a higher level without adequate coordination with the groups and community developers that are really there at the implementation stage, it could be a problem, especially when we're talking about resource constraint. I mean, you just pointed out how shocking it is that so much resources are needed to really implement these goals. But I think a lot of those inefficiencies could be dealt with if there's a better partnership in these levels.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite the panelists to add their last comments, and they have each 1 minute. That will give me 20 minutes to wrap it up. No, I'm going to. So Maria goes first.
Take this. Taking up.
So I think it was more like a comment, I believe, but I completely agree with that. Yes, I think MDGs were more focused on access, so we were looking more at access to universal primary enrollment and things like that. But now, since most of the countries in South Asia are considerably, I think, doing a better job at having the basics in place, we have basic infrastructure. It varies quite a bit, but then I think it's a big improvement over what we had in the past. So we have basic facilities, we have basic school infrastructure in place, but now we have the bigger challenges to look at, which is improving quality of education. And I think that's maybe the reason why we are struggling so much, because it's not an easy battle. Just answering this, like the other question I had. So this was yes, as much as we would like it to be, controlled and randomized thing, but then the government of Punjab is really big on doing everything on a large scale, and they would not let us have a control and a treatment group. They would be like, if you need to do this, you need to do it for everyone, because that's not ethical. That we give training to some and not to others. So yes, this was for everyone. The 2 data points that we had were student scores before the intervention, and then teacher grades on the classroom observation before and then after. So this was the way it was done.
Thank you. I think, Cynthia, did you have any question for me?
No, that was just I was sharing the story from the
Okay, don't worry. We'll settle it out over the
Settle it out of court.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's really important to look at, I think it's a cross-cutting issues. We don't need to focus on particular one goal. So we need to focus on the issues, on different issues, and really important that is we need to focus on the quality issues. One issue that I need to focus on, that is productivity is the ultimate source of living standard. So to ensure the productivity, we need to ensure quality of health expenditure. Particularly in the context of Bangladesh, we are spending less than 1% of GDP, and out-of-pocket expenditure is something like 62%. So, if we want to ensure quality, we need to focus on, particularly on this human development issues on quality of health expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Eusuf. So thank you again for your patience. We heard some wonderful observations, statistics, and views on sustainable development growth. So for those who are working on it, like I'm working on it, I hope I'll be working on it for the next 17 years or 13 years, and I'll have some consulting to do on SDGs, because it's a very tough issue. And as Selim said, there are 3 important ones. The others also matter. But then then Maria said, no, education is the most important. Let's see, is Bangladesh, which has achieved primary education, doing very well, is going to lead the other countries, India and Pakistan, and give them the tools they need to progress, women particularly. And that Professor Eusuf had a very important metric. You cannot measure it. And what is that? Quality. But I'll say you can measure quality. So just because Selim likes to measure everything in quantitative terms, we would like to also see some measures for qualitative achievement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.